Hey everyone, before we get into today's episode, if you've ever listened and thought, I've got something to say about this, come join the conversation. Search Never Have I Had the Urge Conversations on Facebook. That's where the stories continue and where your voice becomes part of it.
Let's just listen to you.
I wasn't born into silence. I was born into sound. The Bronx, New York, back when it still felt like a world inside a world. Sirens blaring in the distance, music by Hector Lavoe and El Gran Combo de Puerto Rico coming out through open windows. Voices, Spanish, English, sometimes both in the same sentence. Back then, we lived in a New York City brownstone on Walton Avenue, a house my grandparents bought in the late 1950s. 3 stories high, worn stone steps out front, cool black wrought iron railings, and tall windows that carried the sounds of the city straight into the house. And just behind us, like clockwork, the elevated 4 train would come rumbling down Jerome Avenue, so loud it would shake the windows, until one day you didn't hear it anymore, because it had become a part of you, a part of your truth. Hello everyone, welcome. This is Never Have I Had the Urge to Tell the Truth. That's where my story begins. Not just mine, but my parents. They came here from Puerto Rico, not chasing something abstract like the American dream, but something more real than that. Stability, opportunity, a chance to build something that could last longer than a single generation. By the time I came into the picture, the hard part, leaving Puerto Rico, the adjusting to life in New York City, the figuring it all out, that part had already been done for my 3 sisters and me. But you could still feel it in the way my parents worked, in the way they carried themselves, in the way certain things just mattered more. Because back then, New York City, especially the Bronx, wasn't just a place you lived. It was a place you became. Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Italians, Irish, black families from the South, Jews, everybody finding their place in the same few square blocks. Different languages, different foods, different music, different traditions. But somehow, everybody understood the same thing. You don't come here to stay the same. You come here to build, to learn, to grow, and to go. And inside that kind of environment, you learn early that there are 2 versions of everything. The life you live in public and the one that happens behind closed doors. Respect and survival. Pride and pressure. Truth and what gets left out of it. I didn't have the words for it back then. I just knew that in our home, like in a lot of other homes around us, there were things you said and things you didn't. Not because anyone told you to lie, but because you understood some things were better left, edited, or unsaid. First grade, that's when things changed. Up until that point, home was home, school was just school. I had just gotten out of kindergarten. But walking into St. Simon's Stock, a Catholic school in the Bronx, that was different. The place had structure, order, expectation. You didn't just show up there, you answered to it. And right away, I wasn't just me, I was a last name. My 3 older sisters, each 2 years apart, had already come through those same hallowed halls. Same classrooms, same desks, same nuns. So by the time I got there, being the youngest, I wasn't being introduced. I was being recognized by my name, and not in a good way. I remember the priests, the nuns, most of them Irish, strict, didn't even begin to cover it. There was a hardness to them, a sharpness in the way they spoke, the way they looked at you, like they already knew something about you before you ever said a word. And maybe they did, because on the first day of every school year, it never failed. They'd look down at the paper, call my name, pause, and then look up at me again, just a little longer than usual. And in that moment, I knew they had dealt with my sisters. And my sisters, they were strong, strong-willed, independent, exactly how we were being raised at home. They didn't bend easy, and they didn't stay quiet either. And in a place like that, that kind of energy didn't go unnoticed. So before I ever said anything, before I ever did anything, my name was Mud. There was already a version of me in their minds, and I could feel it. In the way I was watched, in the way I was corrected, in the way discipline seemed to come just a little faster and a little harder for me. It wasn't just about learning. It was about control, about obedience, about knowing your place and staying in it. And somewhere in all of that, you start to figure something out. Not everything you say lands the same. Not every truth works in your favor. So you adjust. You think before you speak. You measure what you say. You learn what not to say, because in that environment, truth wasn't just about being honest. It was about consequences that came with being honest. And for a kid trying to find his place in a system that already thought it knew him, you don't stop telling the truth. You just learn how to shape it. From the classroom, you moved into the church. And that was a different kind of silence. Not the kind where nothing was happening, but the kind where everything felt like it mattered more. You could hear it before you even understood it. Psalms being sung, voices echoing off of high ceilings, stretching out longer than the words themselves. There was a rhythm to it. Stand, sit, kneel, repeat. Stand, sit, kneel, repeat. Like your body was being taught something before your mind could catch up. And then there was the smell. That smell. The incense, thick, almost heavy, being swung slowly through the air. It didn't just fill the room. It marked it. Like this place was separate from everything else outside those doors. Sacred. That's what they called it. You start young, baptized, before you even know what it means. Then classes, years of them, learning prayers by memory, learning what's right, what's wrong, learning that actions have weight, and that weight follows you. Until eventually, you reach a moment they tell you matters. Your first Holy Communion. Dressed up, family watching, pictures being taken, and you're told, this is important. This is you stepping closer, closer to God, closer to understanding. But somewhere along the way, before that moment, you're introduced to something else. Confession. Because before you can receive, you have to be cleared. And the church had a way of making that feel real. The dim lighting, the rows of candles burning steady, light bouncing off of statues watching you from every corner. Silent, but present. And those stained glass windows, I loved them. I used to sit there and just watch the light come through. Colors spilling across the pews, across the floors, across people's faces, red, blue, gold. It was beautiful, almost peaceful, like something bigger was happening. I even learned to serve it, an altar boy, up close, watching everything unfold just a few feet away. The rituals, the timing, the precision of it all. Nothing crazy, nothing out of place. Everything done for a reason. And somewhere inside all of that structure, all of that beauty, you're being taught something very specific. That what you do matters. That what you think matters. And most importantly, that what you don't say still counts. And then you step into it. The confessional. Small, closed off, dim. A space just big enough to hold you and whatever secrets you were about to say. You kneel down. You can hear someone shift on the other side. They slide a small panel open, but you don't see them. Just a voice and a script you've already memorized. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. At 6 years old, I didn't even fully understand what that meant. Sinned? I was just a kid. What was I supposed to say? I didn't have some long list of wrongs, no real weight behind anything I'd done. But that didn't matter, because confession wasn't optional. It was expected, mandatory, something you did so you could move forward. So year after year, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, I went in, knelt down, said the words, Father, forgive me for I have sinned. And eventually, I figured something out. If I didn't have anything to confess, I'd just come up with something. Nothing crazy, nothing that would get me in trouble. Just enough to say I did it. Enough to get through it. Because at the end of it, there was always the same outcome. A few prayers, 3 Our Fathers, 2 Hail Marys. Say those and you're good. Cleared, free to go, free to receive. And I won't lie, I look forward to that part. Walking back out, getting in line, maybe poking a friend or two in the back, and receiving the sacrament. Those little wafers, the body of Christ, and the wine, real wine. Even as kids, we knew. You could smell it. You could see it. The priests and the nuns, they were always drinking. Some of them didn't exactly look like they were starting fresh that morning. Maybe a little tired, maybe a little off, a little hungover. But back then, you didn't question it. That's just how things were. And honestly, none of that stood out to me as much as this. I wasn't confessing the truth. I was participating in something, going through the motions, a ritual, following the steps, doing just enough to be told I was forgiven, and walking out feeling that I had done it right. Not because I told the whole truth, but because I told something. And then everything changed. Not all at once, not in some big dramatic moment, but slowly, quietly, we moved from the Bronx to Forest Hills, Queens, a step up. And with that move came a different kind of world, different streets, different pace, different people. But more than anything, a different way of thinking and seeing things. St. Simon's Stock was behind me now. The uniforms, the structure, the certainty, gone. And in its place, public school. Junior High School 157. Halsey Junior High School, to be exact. No nuns, no priests, no incense, no ritual. Just classroom. Teachers, rowdy kids, and questions. A lot of questions. And for the first time, the answers weren't always the same. Because up until that point, I had been taught something very clearly: how the world began, who created it, what it meant, and my place in it. There was no room for interpretation. It just was. But now, I'm sitting in a public school classroom, and I'm hearing and taking in something completely different. Darwin, evolution, time, change. The idea that life didn't just appear but developed, adapted, evolved from apes. And I remember sitting there thinking, wait, what? So which one is it? Because they both couldn't be true. And nobody was really slowing down to explain it to me. There was no moment where someone said, hey kid, what you were taught before and what you're hearing now, these are two completely different ways of seeing the world. No, you were just expected to take it in and keep it moving. That's when something shifted, because now it wasn't just about what I said anymore. It was about what I believed, and whether what I believed was even true to begin with. That certainty that I grew up with started to loosen, not disappear, just open up a bit. And with that came something new. Choice. What do I believe? What do I accept? What do I question? And maybe more importantly, what do I say I believe? Because by this point, I already knew how to do that part. I learned to edit the truth. And then I learned the truth itself could be questioned. And once that happened, telling the truth all the time didn't feel necessary anymore. Not in the same way. Because now, truth wasn't just something you were taught. It was something you had to navigate. And depending on where you were, who you were around, and what it meant in that moment, you could shape it just enough to get through. And just when I thought it couldn't get any more complicated, I came across something else in junior high school, a book, Chariots of the Gods. I mentioned it in a previous episode. And that book didn't just offer a different answer. It asked a completely different question. What if everything we've been told or taught about where we come from, about who we are, isn't just misunderstood, but incomplete? Now, it wasn't just religion or science. It was something else entirely. And at that point, it stopped being about choosing what was true. It became about realizing truth might not be as fixed as I was taught to believe. And then you grow up. No more uniforms, no more lines to stand in, no more kneeling in a booth, waiting to be told you're forgiven. Just life. And life doesn't come with a script. There's no one on the other side of a screen. No voice telling you what to say next. No set number of prayers to make things right. It's just you and the truth. Or whatever version of it you choose to believe and live with. Because somewhere along the way, that pattern followed me. Not the ritual, but the habit. Saying just enough to move past something, enough to smooth things over, enough to avoid the full weight of what really happened. It shows up in ways you don't always notice at first. In apologies. Oh, I'm sorry if I didn't mean to. That's not what I was trying to do. They're not lies, but not the whole truth either. Just edited, refined, shaped in a way that makes it easier to say and easier for others to hear. In relationships, where you hold back certain things you say because saying them out loud might change everything. At work, where being fully honest might cost you more than you're willing to lose. Even with yourself, that might be the hardest one. Because you can convince yourself of almost anything if you say it enough times, and nobody's there to question it. No priest, no teacher, no one holding you accountable to what's real. So you become the one who decides what's true, what's closing up, and what never gets said at all. And the truth is, we've gotten really good at that. Not just as individuals, but as people. We present versions of ourselves. We curate what other people see. We control the narrative. And as long as it sounds right, as long as it feels acceptable, we keep it pushing. Just like we did back then. Say something. Do a little something to make up for it. And keep going. But there's a difference now. Back then, I didn't fully understand what I was doing. Now I do. Now I know when I'm holding something back. Now I know when I'm shaping the truth to make it easier for me to carry. And that awareness, that's where it gets uncomfortable. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start to realize it's not that telling the truth is hard. It's that telling the whole truth comes with a cost. A real one. It can change how people see you. It can change relationships. It can force you to face things you'd rather leave alone. And that's why most of us don't do it. Not completely anyway. Not all the time. We do what we were taught, even if we don't realize it. We say something, just enough to move on. We expect the absolute truth from everyone else, while we quietly decide how much of it we're willing to give. Look at businesses, corporate America to be exact. Businesses start off wanting to hire the best employees possible. And that's understandable. You go for a job, you fill out the application, where they want your life and work history. They want to run a credit and background check on you. And after all is said and done, you find yourself in a job that doesn't always do everything above board, if you know what I mean. And don't get me started on politics or our politicians. They don't lie to us, right? They just reached that professional level of what I was doing in that confessional booth at 6 years old. I look back at that kid on Walton Avenue, the one who learned to tune out the roar of the elevated 4 train until it became part of his DNA. I realize now that I did the same thing with the truth. I tuned out the friction. I smoothed over the jagged edges of my own story until the noise of the edit just felt like silence. But none of us are above reproach. We like to point fingers at corporations, the politicians, the system. It's easy to judge the world for being dishonest. But when you strip away the uniforms, the titles, and the expectations of everyone else, who are you when you're alone in a room? I know who I am. I'm still that boy in the confessional, trying to find a version of the story that sounds good enough to get me through the door. I'm still shaping, still refining, still protecting the parts of me I'm not ready for the world to see. Because being honest with the world is a performance. Being honest with yourself, that's a reckoning. It's the realization that the train is still running. The noise is still there. We've just gotten used to it so that we've forgotten what real silence actually sounds like. So yeah, when I hear people say, I don't lie, I don't even argue. I just tell them, you just did. Because whether we call it a lie, or bending the truth, or even a little white lie, it is what it is. It's the shaping and reshaping of the truth. Our truth. Whatever we need it to be in that moment. And the truth is, it starts early. You don't have to teach it. You don't have to explain it. It's already there. Take a cookie jar. Put a cookie jar on a table. Leave it alone with a 3 or 4-year-old. And if they take one without permission and you ask them about it, most of the time their first answer isn't yes. It's no. Not because they're bad. Not because they're trying to deceive you in some calculated way. But because something in them already understands consequences. Self-preservation. The instinct to protect themselves. from whatever comes next. And that instinct, it doesn't go away. It just gets better, more refined, more polished. We learn how to say things in a way that sounds right, feels right, gets us through. So yeah, everyone lies in some way at some point. But here's the part that's always stuck with me. No one wants to be lied to. It's like thieves that don't like being stolen from. We expect the truth from everyone else while quietly deciding how much of it we're willing to give. And maybe that's the real question. Not whether we lie, but how much of the truth we're actually willing to live with. Because I was taught that if I said my sins out loud, they'd be taken away. But what I learned is that what we hold back doesn't disappear. It stays, shaped, edited, carried. And whether we admit it or not, it becomes a part of us. Maybe that's the hardest confession of all. Not the one you whisper in a booth behind a sliding panel, but the one you finally admit to yourself in silence. Because the truth isn't always about guilt. Sometimes it's about recognition. Recognition of who we are, who we've been, and the stories we keep editing just to live our lives. So maybe the real challenge in life isn't learning how to tell the truth to other people. Maybe it's finding the courage to stop lying to ourselves. Thank you for joining me. And remember, behind every want, there lies an urge. Behind every urge, there's a need. Until next time, thanks for joining me on Never Have I Had the Urge. This show was written and produced by me, your host, Victor Jimenez. Take care, everyone. If you've been enjoying Never Have I Had the Urge, please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcast. It helps new listeners discover the stories and conversations we're building here. And be sure to follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being part of the conversation.